My sister mocked my job in front of everyone. Then her boss walked in and greeted me first. My name is Erin Clark, and once upon a time, I was the one everyone pinned their hopes on. In high school, I had straight A's, a knack for physics, and an early acceptance letter to a top engineering program that came with a full scholarship. My parents talked about me like I was already halfway to building rockets or designing skyscrapers. I still remember the day I opened that letter. My dad hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe, and my mum cried, calling it the start of something big. My little sister Rachel clapped along, wide-eyed and grinning, as if my future somehow lit a path for hers too. But that future started slipping the moment our mother began forgetting things. First it was her keys, then it was whether she'd already made dinner, then it was our names. The doctors said early onset Alzheimer's, and everything after that felt like a fog settling in over our house. I deferred my scholarship that fall, thinking it would just be one semester. I told myself it wasn't quitting, just a pause. I figured once we got a routine down, once Dad adjusted and Rachel settled into her new school, I could go back. But Mum's condition worsened. She stopped recognizing Dad on some days, and Rachel avoided home whenever she could. I stepped in to manage the pieces. Doctor appointments, insurance calls, and feeding schedules. I learned how to bathe her gently, how to keep her calm during episodes, how to administer medication when her body fought even that. Rachel was 15 then, bright, ambitious, already planning college tours and extracurriculars to pad her resume. She didn't ignore what was happening, she just couldn't handle it. Or maybe she wouldn't. Either way, she spent more time at dance practice or sleepovers than in the house that was slowly turning into a hospice. I never blamed her. She was a kid trying to outrun a reality too heavy for her age. But while she ran forward, I stood still. I stopped mentioning school, stopped bringing up my scholarship. Eventually, it just expired. And when it did, no one really said anything, not even me. Mum passed 2 years later quietly in the middle of the night. I was the one holding her hand. I sat in the dark afterward for hours, not crying, just trying to feel something that wasn't exhaustion. By then, Rachel had already been accepted into a top university out of state. Dad fell into himself after the funeral, barely speaking, barely working. I paid the bills with part-time jobs, cooked what I could, and cleaned when the silence got too loud. That's when the shift happened. When people started seeing Rachel as a rising star. She posted photos with her roommates, videos from campus events, and updates about internships. At family gatherings, everyone asked about her latest achievement, while I handed out plates and refilled glasses. They called her driven. They called me helpful. I didn't realize how much I'd disappeared. Until one Thanksgiving, an aunt asked if I was still living at home, like it was a phase I was meant to grow out of. Rachel smiled and said I was just keeping things together, like that explained it all. No one asked me what I wanted. No one asked if I still dreamed of engineering or if I missed the future I once had. Over time, Rachel became the sister with stories. She talked about mentors and projects and plans. I became the sister who didn't need to be introduced, the one whose life could be summarized in a shrug. At some point, she stopped calling me Erin and started calling me dependable, as if that was all I had become. But deep down, I never forgot what I gave up. Not just the scholarship or the career I might have had, but the version of myself that once felt limitless. I carried that loss like an old photo in my wallet, folded, faded, but never thrown away. It's strange how quickly people can rewrite your narrative when you stop showing up in the way they expect. I wasn't the girl with ambition anymore. I was the one who stayed behind, the one who folded laundry while others built futures. And Rachel, she took that contrast and ran with it. She never mocked me outright back then. It was always subtle. Like when she introduced me as her sister who helps around the house, or when she joked that I probably knew more about cleaning supplies than coding. I laughed it off every time. But something inside me chipped slowly and quietly. Looking back, I don't regret taking care of Mum. I don't regret stepping up when everything fell apart. But I do wish someone had seen me, really seen me, and told me I was more than the shadow of someone else's success. Because even shadows come from light. And I was tired of being the dim part of someone else's story. After Mum passed and Rachel left for college, the house felt like a waiting room no one was coming back to. Dad barely spoke, drifting through the days with the television as his only anchor. I picked up hours at the local diner, then a front desk job at a parts warehouse just to keep the lights on. The money wasn't great, but they let me take home old instruction manuals and discarded devices. I started tinkering out of boredom at first, then curiosity. My first win was fixing the coffee maker we thought was dead for good. There was something about taking something broken, understanding its pieces, and bringing it back to life that gave me peace. I wasn't saving the world, but I was making a dent in the quiet. That quiet had been suffocating for years. I began learning everything I could. I watched late-night repair tutorials, printed out schematics, and spent my evenings unscrewing old blenders and toasters. Sometimes I broke more than I fixed, but every mistake taught me something new. Over time, neighbors started asking if I could take a look at their appliances. A woman from church brought me her broken hairdryer. A retired couple asked about their microwave. I never promised miracles, but I promised I'd try. The first time someone insisted on paying me, I refused. It felt weird to charge for something I was still figuring out. But they pressed $20 into my hand, said it was worth more than that, and smiled like I'd done something special. That was the moment I realized this could be more than a hobby. I saved up slowly used part of Mum's old sewing room as a workspace and painted a sign with my name and a simple phrase, Erin Repairs. No frills, no promises, just a small claim that I could fix what others threw away. At first, it was all word of mouth. People came in with everything from vintage radios to modern food processors. Some came for repairs. Others just needed to talk. My little shop became part workspace, part haven. I met people I never would have crossed paths with otherwise. A man who brought in his late wife's mixer because he couldn't bear to throw it out. A teenage girl who needed her laptop to run before finals. A single dad who just wanted his daughter's nightlight fixed before bedtime. They didn't care about degrees or resumes. They cared that I listened, that I treated their things and, by extension, their lives with care. I added a couch near the front brewed coffee for whoever wanted to sit a while, and learned that some people just needed a place where something could be made whole again. In fixing things, I started fixing myself too. There's something grounding about turning a screw, testing a fuse, and knowing you made something work again with your own hands. I'd never felt that kind of clarity in school, or in the shadow of other people's achievements. This was mine. I eventually left the front desk job, used my savings to rent a tiny shopfront near the corner laundromat. The floor creaked. The walls needed paint, and the lights buzzed, but it was mine. I hung up the same hand-painted sign and opened the door with nothing but a toolkit, a folding chair, and enough grit to get through the slow days. Bit by bit, the community embraced me. I kept prices low, offered honest timelines, and never upsold anyone. When something couldn't be fixed, I said so. When I could, I put my best into it. I wasn't building a business empire, I was building trust. And in doing that, I built a life. I hired a part-time assistant, a high school senior named Eli, who wanted to learn. Later, I brought on a retired electrician, Mr. Carson, who said my shop reminded him of how he fell in love with the trade in the first place. We didn't wear uniforms. We wore tool belts and tired smiles. Sometimes Rachel would call quick check-ins updates from her job. She'd ask how things were going, and I'd say steady. She didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer them. There wasn't resentment, just space. But inside I felt whole. I didn't need applause or a title to prove I mattered. My work did that for me every time someone picked up a toaster that now worked or thanked me for saving a memory they thought they'd lost. That shop saved me, not just financially, but emotionally. It gave me something I could call my own, something no one could minimize or redefine. Every time I locked the door at night, swept the floor, and turned off the light, I walked out feeling worthy. Not because someone said I was, because I knew I was. And that was enough. It started with a text. Just a quick message from Rachel one afternoon while I was knee-deep in rewiring a broken lamp. She said her company was hosting a rooftop mixer and thought it might be fun if I came. At first, I thought she'd sent it to the wrong person. Rachel didn't usually invite me to things, especially not work events. Our worlds didn't really overlap, and when they did, it felt like she was doing charity more than sharing space. I stared at the screen for a while before replying. Asked her why me, half joking but half hoping she had a real reason. She replied with a laugh emoji and something like, "Because you never come to anything," which felt like both an answer and a dodge. For a minute, I considered saying no. I could already picture myself standing awkwardly with a plastic cup, wearing something simple, while she floated between conversations in heels and designer polish. I could hear the introductions already. "This is my sister Erin. She fixes stuff." But then I thought about the way Rachel had been lately. A little more polished, a little more distant. Like she had written her version of who I was and decided not to revise it. Maybe showing up would at least challenge the narrative. So I said yes. Told her I'd be there. She sent back a thumbs up and an address. The night before the event, I stood in front of my closet for too long. Nothing I owned screamed rooftop cocktail hour. I picked a navy dress I'd worn to a cousin's wedding once. It was simple clean and still zipped without too much effort. That was good enough. I even picked up a bag of local coffee that Rachel used to love. I wasn't sure why. Maybe a peace offering. Maybe a habit I hadn't unlearned. Driving downtown the next day felt like entering someone else's life. Skyscrapers, valet parking, rooftop views. It wasn't my scene. It was hers. But I walked in anyway, clutching that gift bag like armor. The space was beautiful. String lights overhead, soft jazz playing, and people who looked like they had their lives curated. I stood near the edge, sipping club soda, scanning the room for Rachel. When she finally spotted me, her smile was bright, but a little too surprised. She waved me over with that practiced ease, the kind that makes you feel like you're entering her world, not just joining a party. She hugged me lightly, then turned back to her group. I stayed close but quiet, observing more than speaking. It wasn't nerves, it was instinct. Something in me knew this wasn't just a friendly invite. There was something beneath it. As I listened to her talk, animated and full of charm, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been brought here for a reason, not as a guest, not even as family, but maybe as a contrast, a prop. And yet I didn't leave. I stayed because a part of me was curious about what she wanted to show off, or maybe what she wanted to prove. And a bigger part of me, I had a feeling that the night wasn't going to go the way she thought it would. Rachel was holding court near the center of the rooftop, laughing with a group of co-workers clustered around the open bar. She motioned me over with the kind of familiarity that felt more like a show than a welcome. I walked up slowly, the gift bag still in my hand, already feeling out of place. Everyone looked sharp. Sleek suits, tailored dresses, glasses of wine that never seemed to empty. Rachel turned to me, her voice just loud enough to catch the group's attention, and said, "This is my sister Erin. She runs a little repair shop, a real hands-on kind of person. The smile on her face didn't match the tone. It was too bright, too performative. The kind of smile that dares you to take offense so she can call you sensitive later. I nodded, steadying my voice as I said, I run a small repair and refurbishing business. It's nothing fancy, but it keeps me busy. One of the guys in the circle raised an eyebrow and asked if I fixed phones or fridges. Rachel laughed before I could answer. She can fix anything with a plug. She once refused to let Mum upgrade her blender because she wanted to fix the old one, said it had sentimental value. The group chuckled politely. I didn't. I kept my smile in place, but my jaw was tight. Every word felt like a needle small enough to seem harmless, sharp enough to sting. She leaned in toward a colleague and added, Erin would rather fight old wires than embrace smart tech. It's kind of charming, actually. I wanted to say something. I wanted to remind her I had built something from nothing, that I worked with integrity and skill, that fixing things was about more than cords and circuits. But I stayed quiet. Not because I had nothing to say, but because saying it would have been for her benefit, not mine. And she wasn't ready to listen. The group shifted focus, laughing at a shared office joke I didn't understand. I stood there, half visible, the outsider dressed in a dress too plain and shoes not quite high enough. I could feel the narrative forming around me. The capable, polished sister and the quaint fixer-upper from the suburbs. Rachel didn't look at me as she spoke again. Just kept going. She said I was stubborn about old appliances, how I probably knew more about microwaves than marketing. Another laugh. Another weight in my chest. I stepped back a little. Eyes scanning the edge of the rooftop, trying to breathe through the pressure. The skyline glittered beyond the glass panels. My reflection floated faintly in the glass, small, shadowed. It would have been easier to leave, to walk away before the next jab. But I didn't. Not out of pride, out of something deeper, something still and waiting. Because a part of me knew the night wasn't over, and the room hadn't heard the full story yet. The elevator chimed just as someone near the bar cracked a joke about home warranties. The sound cut through the chatter like a soft warning. Heads turned, posture shifted, and in walked Ms. Grant. She wasn't tall, but the room moved around her like gravity. Dark burgundy suit hair, slicked back expression, unreadable. Everyone seemed to hold their breath without meaning to. Rachel straightened immediately, smoothing her dress as she subtly adjusted her stance. I saw her eyes scan the room, anticipating that moment when Ms. Grant would acknowledge her presence. But Ms. Grant didn't pause. She didn't look toward the management team or the executives near the stage. She walked straight toward me. Her voice, calm and clear, broke the silence. Erin Clark, I wasn't expecting to see you here. I smiled, steady but caught off guard. Neither was I replied. The group around Rachel went still. Rachel herself froze, lips slightly parted. She stepped forward slowly, almost hesitantly. You two know each other. Ms. Grant turned to her. Your sister is the reason our logistics turnaround has stayed above 97%. Her team has been quietly keeping our supply chain functional for over 2 years. I assumed you knew. Rachel blinked, trying to process. I thought that was handled by one of our third-party vendors. It is, Ms. Grant answered without missing a beat. And Erin's shop is where they rely on when they can't fix something themselves. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was absolute. You could feel the recalibration happening in real time. Every glance that had skimmed past me before now came back with new weight. Ms. Grant turned to me again. We've never met in person, but your diagnostic reports are some of the most precise I've seen. Your work speaks louder than most resumes. Thank you for what you do. I nodded, calm but grounded. I just try to do it right. She smiled, almost approving. Then she turned and drifted into another part of the room, leaving behind the kind of echo that reshapes a space. I looked over at Rachel. Her eyes were still wide, her face unreadable now for entirely different reasons. She wasn't the center anymore. She wasn't even the narrator. And I hadn't said much. I hadn't defended myself or asked to be noticed. But somehow truth had walked in, wearing a power suit, and when it spoke my name. Rachel found me near the snack table, clutching a half-full glass of wine like it could keep her grounded. Her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it at one of these events. Not soft exactly, just stripped of performance. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her eyes scanning my face like maybe the answer had been there all along. I looked at her. Would it have changed anything? She didn't answer right away, and that silence told me more than words could have. She looked down, then back up, searching for something she could hold on to. "I didn't mean to embarrass you." I nodded once. "Yes, you did. You just didn't think it would backfire." She winced, but didn't deny it. I let the silence stretch a little longer. Not to punish her, just to let the truth sit there where we both could see it clearly. "I've worked hard to get here," she said. "You gave up on all of it. I didn't understand why." I shook my head gently. "No, Rachel. You didn't look close enough to try." Her eyes flicked away, then returned. "I guess I always thought you settled." I nodded. A lot of people did. That's the luxury of distance. She looked like she wanted to argue, but couldn't find the ground to stand on. I didn't say it to wound her. I said it because it was real, because it needed saying. "I rebuilt," I said simply. "I didn't climb a ladder. I laid bricks. And I laid every one of them straight." She swallowed, and for a moment I saw something shift in her. Not shame, exactly, more like understanding newly born and a little unsteady. She took a breath, then said it. "I really am sorry." I nodded again. "Good. Now do better." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a challenge. It was a request. Because change, real change, only ever starts with awareness. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time in years. Maybe she was. Maybe we both were. People around us had gone back to mingling, but the air between us felt different, lighter, not fixed, not perfect, just open. We didn't hug. We didn't make some dramatic promise to start over. But she stayed beside me for the rest of the evening, not to perform, just to be near. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the background to someone else's story. I felt like the room had finally caught up to a truth I'd been living quietly all along. That was enough. Later that night, after most of the guests had drifted home and the music softened to a hum, Ms. Grant found me again. This time she had a drink in her hand and a different look in her eyes. She spoke with warmth, not formality, and thanked me again for the work my shop had done. Then she said something I hadn't expected. If I ever wanted to bypass the middleman and work directly with her company, I should give her a call. She slipped me a card, sleek and heavy, with embossed letters and the weight of opportunity. I thanked her. Not with the eagerness of someone desperate to be noticed, but with the steadiness of someone who knew her worth. I told her I'd think about it. And I meant it. But the truth was, I already knew what I'd decide. I didn't start my shop to be discovered. I didn't build it for applause or partnerships or corporate invitations. I built it because something inside me needed a place where care mattered more than prestige. The next morning, I opened the shop like I always did. I turned on the lights, started a fresh pot of coffee, and checked the schedule taped near the register. A woman was coming in with a broken mixer. A teenage boy was dropping off a game console. Mr. Carson had already beaten me to the workbench elbow deep in an old radio, and it felt right. The card stayed in my drawer, tucked between invoices and spare fuses. I didn't throw it away. I didn't frame it either. It was a reminder, not a prize. A small proof that value doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it walks quietly behind you until the world finally looks. Rachel and I talk more now. Not like before, not like sisters who share closets and secrets, but like people who've learned to meet each other where they really are. She asks questions now. She listens more. Sometimes she even calls just to ask if something in her apartment can be fixed instead of replaced. And I help. Not because I need her to see me differently, but because I no longer need her to see me at all. I know who I am. That's enough. Respect, I've learned, it doesn't come from shouting your worth. It comes from doing the work, day after day, with care and conviction, until the results speak for themselves. I don't need to chase recognition. I just need to keep showing up. This life I built, it's not glamorous, it's not glossy, but it's mine, and piece by piece, wire by wire, it's made me whole. Some people climb ladders, others build their own ground. I chose the ground, and it holds me just fine.